The day they dragged me into that windowless conference room, 3 men sat across from me, avoiding my eyes as they delivered their verdict. "We can't keep you anymore. You're too expensive." My heart turned to ice. I never thought my experience, skills, and dedication could become a crime. But in that moment, I swore I'd transform this humiliation into something they'd regret for the rest of their lives. They wanted cheap. They'd learn exactly how much their decision would cost them. My name is Emily Carter, and at 34, I thought I had everything figured out. I'd clawed my way up from a working-class neighborhood in Youngstown, Ohio, where my father worked double shifts at the steel mill and my mother cleaned office buildings at night. Their sacrifices bought me textbooks, SAT prep courses, and eventually, a scholarship to Northwestern. I was living proof that the American dream still existed, or so I believed. For 6 years, I'd been a senior financial strategist at Brightwell Dynamics, a fintech corporation nestled in the heart of Riverton's gleaming business district. The city itself was a testament to America's rapid transformation. Old manufacturing plants converted into tech hubs, historic brownstones shadowing glass towers, food trucks parked next to Michelin-starred restaurants. It was a place where old money met new innovation, and I'd positioned myself right at the intersection. My corner office on the 14th floor overlooked the Riverton River, where rowing teams practiced at dawn while I was already 3 espressos deep into market analysis reports. I'd earned that view. Every merger model that saved the company millions, every risk assessment that prevented disaster, every strategic pivot that opened new revenue streams, they all had my fingerprints on them. My annual performance reviews read like love letters to competence. Exceptional analytical skills. Invaluable team asset. Consistently exceeds expectations. I dressed the part too. Sharp blazers from Nordstrom Rack that I'd learned to pair with designer pieces from consignment shops. My grandmother's pearl earrings lending an air of establishment credibility I hadn't been born into. I'd mastered the art of looking like I belonged, speaking their language fluently. ROI, KPIs, EBITDA, rolling off my tongue as naturally as the Ohio Valley accent I'd trained myself to suppress. The irony was that I still believed in fairness, in meritocracy. Every time I worked until 2 a.m. to perfect a presentation. Every weekend I sacrificed to meet impossible deadlines. I told myself it was building something: security, respect, a seat at the table that couldn't be pulled away. My apartment in Riverside Heights, a renovated loft with exposed brick and industrial fixtures, was modest by executive standards, but represented everything I'd achieved. The mortgage payments were steep, but manageable with my 6-figure salary. I'd even started a college fund for my 12-year-old niece back in Ohio, determined to make her path easier than mine had been. My colleagues saw me as the workhorse, the one who could untangle the most complex financial knots. "Get Carter on it" became a common refrain when projects seemed impossible. I wore their dependence like armor, convinced it made me indispensable. The younger analysts, fresh MBAs from Wharton and Harvard who'd never had to check their bank balance before buying lunch, would cluster around my desk, seeking mentorship I freely gave. I remembered being hungry for guidance, and I paid it forward, believing in the system that had lifted me up. But Riverton was changing, and so was Brightwell. The startup culture was seeping into established corporations like ours. Ping-pong tables appeared in break rooms. Disruption became the word of the day. The board brought in consultants who spoke about agility and lean operations while eyeing those of us over 30 like we were antiquated machinery due for replacement. I should have seen the signs. The way conversations stopped when I entered the room. The sudden interest in fresh perspectives during strategy meetings. The new CFO, a 30-year-old wonder boy from Silicon Valley, who looked at my comprehensive reports like they were relics from another era, preferring flashy PowerPoints to substantive analysis. But I was too busy being excellent at my job to notice the ground shifting beneath my feet. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I'd arrived at 7 a.m., reviewed the Asian markets, prepared notes for the quarterly planning session. My coffee was still warm when the email arrived. Please join us in Conference Room C at 9:30 a.m. Mandatory attendance. Conference Room C, the one without windows, the one they used for terminations. The walk to conference room C felt like a funeral procession. My heels clicked against the polished floor, each step echoing in my ears. Through the glass walls of the open office, I saw coworkers bent over their screens, deliberately not looking up. They knew, everyone always knew. Inside, 3 men waited. David Brennan, the boyish CFO with his Stanford MBA and Tesla key fob always visible. Marcus Webb, HR director, shuffling papers like a blackjack dealer, and Roger Hartley, my direct supervisor who'd praised my work just last week. Roger couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a spot just past my shoulder as I sat down. "Emily," David began, his voice carrying that practiced sympathy they must teach in management seminars. "First, I want you to know this isn't about performance. Your work has been adequate. 6 years of excellence reduced to adequate. However," he continued, "Brightwell is entering a new phase. We need to optimize our human capital investments." He actually used those words, human capital investments, like I was a stock option that wasn't performing well enough. "Your compensation package is significantly higher than current market rates for similar positions." I felt my throat constrict. "I've been here 6 years. My salary reflects my experience and the value I bring." "Which we appreciate," Marcus interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. "But we can hire 2 junior analysts for what we're paying you. It's simple mathematics." Simple mathematics. I wanted to laugh. I'd saved them $8 million last quarter alone by identifying redundancies in their vendor contracts. But that was apparently too complex a calculation for them to consider. "When?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Today is your last day. Security will escort you to clear your desk. Your access has already been revoked." David glanced at his Apple Watch. "We've prepared a severance package, 2 weeks' pay, continuation of health benefits through the end of the month." 2 weeks. After 6 years, I was worth 2 weeks. Roger finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Emily, this isn't personal. If it were up to me." "But it is up to you," I said, standing. My legs felt like water, but I wouldn't let them see me shake. "All of you. You're choosing this." The walk back to my desk was a blur. A security guard, Miguel, who I'd chatted with every morning for years, stood waiting with a cardboard box. His face was apologetic as he watched me pack. The picture of my parents at my college graduation. The stress ball shaped like a brain my secret Santa had given me. The coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Financial Analyst," a joke gift from the team last Christmas. My computer screen was already dark. 6 years of files, models, strategies, all locked away. My hands trembled as I placed my company badge on the empty desk. Around me, the office hummed with artificial normalcy. The junior analysts I'd mentored kept their heads down, afraid to acknowledge what was happening. Lisa from accounting turned away when our eyes met. Only James, the overnight janitor just starting his shift early, nodded at me with genuine sympathy. "You're too good for this place, Ms. Emily," he whispered as I passed. The elevator ride down felt endless. In the lobby's polished surfaces, I caught my reflection, still professional, still put together. But something had shifted in my eyes. The security guard walked me to the building's entrance. Through the revolving door, I could see Riverton's afternoon sun glinting off the river. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that mine had just imploded. I stood on the sidewalk, holding my pathetic box of possessions, watching Brightwell employees stream past me for lunch. Some recognized me, quickly averting their eyes. I was already a ghost, a cautionary tale they'd whisper about over happy hour drinks. "Did you hear about Emily? Let go. Too expensive," they said. My phone buzzed. An automated email. "Your Brightwell Dynamics email account has been deactivated." Then another. "Please review and sign your separation agreement within 48 hours. Standing there, surrounded by the lunch crowd, I felt the full weight of what too expensive really meant. It wasn't about money, it was about power. They'd calculated that my knowledge, my experience, my dedication, all of it was worth less than saving a few dollars on salary. They'd looked at me and seen not a person who'd given them everything, but a line item to be optimized. The anger came then, hot and pure, burning through the shock. They thought they were done with me. They thought I'd slink away, sign their papers, disappear into the ranks of the discarded middle-aged professionals haunting job fairs and LinkedIn. They had no idea who they'd just made their enemy. The first week, I kept waking up at 5:30 a.m., muscle memory pulling me from sleep. I'd reach for my phone to check the Asian markets before remembering that wasn't my job anymore. I wasn't anyone's job anymore. My savings would last 3 months if I was careful. The mortgage on my Riverside Heights loft took half my unemployment benefits. Health insurance through Cobra would cost $1,800 a month, a sick joke for someone without income. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, doing the mathematics of desperation. Cancel the gym membership, cut the cable, shop at Aldi instead of Whole Foods. Every calculation felt like another piece of my carefully constructed life being stripped away. The unemployment office in downtown Riverton occupied a building that seemed designed to humiliate. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Plastic chairs that stuck to your legs. The smell of industrial disinfectant barely masking despair. I stood in line behind a man in a paint-stained Carhartt jacket and a woman clutching a folder of rejection letters. We were all equals here, reduced to case numbers and weekly benefit amounts. Next! The clerk didn't look up as I approached. I slid my documents across the scratched plexiglass barrier. Financial strategist, she read aloud, finally glancing at me. Let me guess, Brightwell, you're the 4th this month. 4th? They weren't just replacing me, they were gutting everyone with experience. The waiting area told the same story. Men and women in their 30s and 40s, all wearing the shell-shocked expression of the suddenly disposable. I recognized Tom from Brightwell's marketing department, 15 years with the company. He gave me a bitter smile. They're calling it right-sizing, he said. Hired 3 22-year-olds to replace me. Kids don't even know what a media buy is. But hey, they're cheap. The job applications blurred together. Senior Financial Analyst at Cromwell Industries, seeking fresh perspectives from emerging talents. Strategic Planning Manager at Delta Systems. Ideal candidate will have 3 to 5 years experience. For a role requiring advanced modeling skills, it took a decade to develop. Every posting seemed coded. We want young, we want cheap, we want disposable. I started lying on applications, shaving years off my experience, dumbing down my accomplishments. The interviews, when I got them, were worse than the rejections. Sitting across from hiring managers half my age, explaining why someone with my credentials would accept a 40% pay cut, watching their eyes glaze over when I mentioned pre-2020 experience, like I was discussing ancient history. You're overqualified became the polite fiction. What they meant was, you're too old, too expensive, too likely to recognize our bullshit. 3 weeks in, I found myself at a networking event, a desperate gathering at a Marriott conference room where laid-off professionals practiced elevator pitches and handed out business cards like playing cards at a casino where everyone was losing. A career counselor with aggressive optimism and a motivational poster aesthetic told us to embrace the pivot and see this as an opportunity for growth. I wanted to scream. Growth? I'd already grown. I'd climbed every mountain they'd put in front of me. Now they wanted me to start over at base camp because someone decided experience was a liability. The nights were the worst. I'd lie awake calculating runway. How many months before I'd have to break my lease, move back to Ohio, admit failure. My sister called weekly, careful not to ask how the job search was going. My parents, now retired, offered to loan me money they couldn't spare. The shame burned hotter than the anger. I started seeing the city differently. Every coffee shop was full of young professionals on laptops, building startups or freelancing, unburdened by mortgages or health conditions that required insurance. The boutique stores I used to browse now seemed like museums of a life I could no longer afford. Riverton's revival, which I'd been part of, now felt like it was designed to price me out. 6 weeks after the firing, I sat in my loft at 2 a.m., laptop warm on my legs, scrolling through job posts. My reflection in the dark window showed someone I barely recognized. Hollow eyes, stress-thinned face, shoulders curved in defeat. The legal pad next to me was covered in increasingly desperate calculations. Sell the car, cash out the 401k with penalties, move to a studio in a worse neighborhood. But then I saw something else in that reflection. The woman who'd studied by candlelight when the power got cut off in college. The girl who'd tutored rich kids in calculus to afford textbooks. The analyst who'd built models that saved millions while executives took credit. They'd called me too expensive. Like I was a coat they'd decided wasn't worth the price tag. The fury that had been simmering for weeks finally crystallized into something harder, sharper. They'd made a calculation about my worth. They'd been wrong. I closed the job sites and opened a new document, not a resume, a business plan. If I was too expensive as an employee, maybe it was time to show them what expensive really meant. The idea came at 3 a.m., sharp and sudden as a blade. All those small and mid-sized companies Brightwell had deemed too small to matter. They still needed financial strategy. They couldn't afford a full-time CFO or a McKinsey consultation. But they were hemorrhaging money from inefficiencies no one had time to identify. I knew because I'd watched Brightwell ignore them for years, focusing only on the whales while the minnows swam away. Carter Analytics. The name felt like armor. I converted my dining table into Command Central. My laptop, a legal pad, and a pot of coffee that never seemed to empty. The business registration cost $275, painful when every dollar mattered, but necessary. I built my own website using a template, learning HTML at midnight from YouTube tutorials. Professional headshots were a luxury I couldn't afford, so I used the one good photo from last year's Brightwell conference. The first cold email took me 3 hours to write. 50 words that needed to convey expertise without desperation. I sent it to Robert Kim, who owned a chain of Korean grocery stores I'd shopped at for years. Brightwell had dismissed his expansion plans as too niche. I knew better. Mr. Kim, I noticed your recent expansion to 3 locations. I specialize in financial optimization for growing businesses. I can identify where you're losing 15 and 20% to inefficiency. First consultation free. No response. I sent 20 more emails that week. Silence screamed back at me. My unemployment checks became startup capital. Instead of groceries, I bought LinkedIn Premium. Instead of keeping the heat above 60 degrees, I invested in accounting software. I wore fingerless gloves while typing, telling myself every sacrifice was temporary. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. James, the janitor from Brightwell, called me one evening. Ms. Emily, my cousin owns a logistics company, small operation, but he's drowning in costs. I told him about you. Marcus Washington ran a trucking company with 12 vehicles and no idea why he was barely breaking, even despite constant demand. I met him at his warehouse, a corrugated metal building that smelled of diesel and ambition. He was skeptical, a Black business owner who'd been burned by consultants before. I can't afford some fancy firm, he said bluntly. You can't afford not to fix what's broken, I replied, matching his directness. Give me 1 week with your books. If I don't find at least $50,000 in annual savings, you owe me nothing. I found $73,000, fuel card fraud from a driver, maintenance contracts charging for services never performed, route inefficiencies that added hundreds of unnecessary miles. I presented it all in a simple spreadsheet, no fancy PowerPoints, just numbers that made Marcus whistle low. Damn, how did I miss this? Because you're running a business, not auditing one. That's where I come in. He paid my invoice immediately and did something more valuable. He talked to other small business owners at his Chamber of Commerce meeting, to his suppliers who were also bleeding money, to his brother-in-law who owned 3 restaurants. My phone started ringing. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by instant ramen and rage. Every client Brightwell had ignored became my target. The Ethiopian restaurant owner struggling with cash flow, the indie bookstore chain trying to compete with Amazon, the medical supply company tangled in inventory chaos. I charged them a fraction of what big firms did, but it was pure profit. No office overhead, no executive bonuses, just me and my laptop and the skills they'd called too expensive. My apartment became a war room. Client files spread across the floor, color-coded by urgency. I held video calls from my bedroom because it had the best light. Always dressed professionally from the waist up, pajama bottoms below frame. I learned to recognize the sound of success, the sharp intake of breath when clients saw how much money they were losing, the excited chatter when they realized it was fixable. 3 months in, I had 12 regular clients. My income matched half my Brightwell salary. But without the commute, the mandatory donations to executive retirement parties, the soul-crushing meetings about meetings, I hired a virtual assistant from the Philippines, a sharp woman named Maria who managed my calendar for a tenth of what Brightwell paid their admin staff. The sweet moment came when I ran into Lisa from accounting at Trader Joe's. She looked exhausted, stress-eaten around the eyes. "Emily, how are you? I heard you're consulting now." "I am. How's Brightwell?" She glanced around, then leaned in. "Chaos. The kids they hired to replace you and Tom don't know what they're doing. David just hired another consultant to fix their mistakes. Someone from Deloitte charging 5 times your salary." I smiled, the kind of smile that would have gotten me fired for insubordination. "Sounds expensive." Walking back to my car, grocery bag in hand, real vegetables, not just ramen. I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Not just hope, power. They'd tried to reduce me to nothing, and I was building something they couldn't touch. That night, I registered Carter Analytics as an LLC, a real company. My company. The laptop screen glowed in my dark apartment as I updated my website, adding client testimonials, case studies, real numbers. At the bottom, I added a tagline that felt like a battle cry. Expert financial strategy at a price that makes sense. Too expensive? I was just getting started. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday, 18 months after Brightwell had shown me the door. I was in my new office, a real office, not my apartment, reviewing contracts when Maria knocked. "Emily, there's a Mr. Patel on line 1, says Robert Kim recommended you." Vijay Patel owned a medical device distribution company with $30 million ERS, annual revenue, and a problem that kept him awake at night. We met at his headquarters, a gleaming building in Riverton's medical district. Unlike my early clients, this wasn't about finding loose change in the couch cushions. This was complex, the kind of challenge that required everything I'd learned in my career. "We're losing $2 million annually, and I can't figure out where," he said, spreading financials across his conference table. "I've had 3 consultants look at this. They gave me pretty reports, but no answers." I spent 2 weeks embedded in his operation, tracing money like a forensic accountant. The issue wasn't theft or obvious waste. It was a complex web of currency hedging gone wrong, invisible to anyone who didn't understand both international finance and medical supply chains. I not only found the leak, but restructured their entire financial operation, saving them $3.2 million annually. Vijay didn't just pay my invoice, he introduced me to his entire network, medical suppliers, pharmaceutical distributors, healthcare startups. Suddenly, I wasn't scraping for clients. They were waiting in line. I hired my first employee, then my second. Sarah. A brilliant analyst Brightwell had also right-sized, joined me with a hunger I recognized. Then, Marcus, a database expert tired of building algorithms for companies that saw him as an expense. We moved to a proper office space in a converted warehouse in Riverton's up-and-coming district. Exposed brick, lots of light, and rent that didn't make me hyperventilate. The growth was exponential. Year 2 ended with 40 clients and 6 employees. Year 3. We had a team of 15 and a reputation that preceded us. Call Carter Analytics became what smart business owners said when traditional firms quoted astronomical fees for basic analysis. I was reviewing our quarterly numbers, $4. $8 million in revenue, 40% profit margins, when Sarah knocked on my door. You need to see this. She handed me her tablet, showing a Business Insider article. Brightwell Dynamics hemorrhaging clients after string of strategic failures. I read it slowly, savoring each word. The young CFO's cost-cutting measures had backfired spectacularly. The cheap talent couldn't handle complex analyses. They'd lost 3 major clients, each worth tens of millions. The board was in panic mode. There's more, Sarah said, swiping to another article. They're looking for a financial consulting firm to help restructure. The contract is worth $2 million. I leaned back in my chair in my office, in my company. Outside the window, Riverton sprawled beneath cloudy skies. The same city that had watched me walk out of Brightwell with a cardboard box now knew Carter Analytics as a force to be reckoned with. Should we bid? Sarah asked. No, I said, then smiled. Let them come to us. The email arrives 2 weeks later. Not from Brightwell directly, but from their board's search committee. Would Carter Analytics be interested in submitting a proposal for their restructuring initiative? I drafted my response carefully. Thank you for considering Carter Analytics. We're currently at capacity with existing clients. However, I'd be willing to discuss possibilities if your needs align with our specialized expertise. Please note our minimum engagement is $3 million for a project of this scope. The number was deliberately insulting, 50% more than their posted budget. The response came within hours. They wanted to meet. I chose my team carefully for the pitch. Sarah, Marcus, and 2 other former Brightwell casualties who'd found new life at Carter Analytics. We prepared for a month, not because we needed to, but because I wanted our presentation to be undeniable. The night before, I stood in my apartment, the same apartment I'd once thought I'd lose. The view hadn't changed, but everything else had. My company had 18 employees, all making more than they had at their previous jobs. We'd helped 63 businesses find financial stability. My bank account held more money than I'd ever imagined possessing. But this wasn't about money anymore. It was about walking back into that building, into those offices where they'd deemed me worthless, and showing them exactly what they'd thrown away. I pulled out my best suit, not from Nordstrom Rack this time, but custom-tailored. The pearls were still my grandmother's, though. Some things were worth more than money. Tomorrow, I would sit across from the people who'd tried to destroy me, but I wouldn't be begging for a job. I'd be deciding whether their company was worth saving. The irony was delicious. They'd called me too expensive when I cost them $120,000 a year. Now I was going to charge them $3 million to fix what their affordable hires had broken. Too expensive? They were about to learn what expensive really meant. The call came on a Thursday afternoon, 3 years and 7 months after they'd escorted me from the building. I was reviewing expansion plans for our Seattle office when Maria interrupted. Emily, there's a Jennifer Harrison from Brightwell Dynamics on line 2. Says it's urgent. Jennifer Harrison, the new COO, brought in 6 months ago to stop the bleeding. I'd been tracking Brightwell's decline through industry newsletters and whispered conversations at conferences. Stock down 47%, 3rd round of layoffs. David Brennan, the boyish CFO who'd fired me, quietly dismissed after his strategies imploded. Ms. Carter. Jennifer's voice was professional but strained. Thank you for taking my call. I'm reaching out because Brightwell needs specialized financial restructuring expertise. I'm aware of your RFP, I said, keeping my voice neutral. We responded with our terms. Yes, about that. $3 million is substantial. It reflects the scope of work required and our current market position. We're quite busy. Silence. Then, the board has authorized me to meet your price, but they want to meet with you personally. Tomorrow, if possible. I looked at my calendar, packed with client meetings I could easily reschedule. I might have an opening at 2 p.m. We were hoping for 9 a.m. The board is flying in specifically. 2 p.m., I repeated. Conference room A, the one with windows. She caught the reference. Everyone knew the termination room had no windows. Of course. We'll see you then. I hung up and walked to my window. Brightwell's tower was visible from here, a gleaming monument to corporate arrogance. Tomorrow, I'd walk through those doors again, but this time, they needed me more than I'd ever needed them. That evening, I called my team together, Sarah, Marcus, and the others who'd been discarded by companies like Brightwell. We'd all rebuilt ourselves into something stronger. They're coming here, Marcus asked, grinning. To our turf? They wanted us to come to them. I declined. Sarah laughed. Make them come to you. Power move 101. But I felt something more complex than triumph. The anger that had fueled my early days had evolved into something colder, more precise. This wasn't about revenge anymore, or not just about revenge. It was about proving that their entire worldview was wrong. That experience had value, that people weren't just lines on a spreadsheet. I pulled up Brightwell's financials on the conference room screen. Look at this. Every mistake they've made stems from the same source. They got rid of institutional knowledge. They fired everyone who understood their systems, their clients, their history. Then they hired cheap replacements who had to learn everything from scratch, making million-dollar mistakes along the way. The irony is beautiful, Sarah said. They saved maybe $2 million in salaries and lost $50 million in revenue. And now they want us to fix it, Marcus added, for $3 million. I nodded. The question is whether we take the job. They all stared at me. You're considering saying no? Sarah asked. I'm considering everything. I turned back to the window. We don't need them anymore. We have plenty of clients. Taking this job means helping the people who threw us away. Or, Marcus said slowly, it means showing them exactly what they lost, making them pay premium prices for what they could have had for a fraction of the cost. The next morning, I dressed carefully. The same suit I'd worn to my termination, now tailored to fit perfectly. The same pearls, the same watch. But everything else had changed. The woman in the mirror wasn't desperate or broken. She was the CEO of a thriving company, about to meet with executives who'd miscalculated so badly they'd destroyed half their company's value. My phone buzzed with messages from former Brightwell colleagues who'd heard about the meeting. Tom, who'd been in the unemployment line with me, now running his own marketing firm. Heard your meeting with the old guard. Give them hell. At noon, I gathered my team. Remember, we're not pitching. We're evaluating whether they're worth our time. They come to us, they meet our terms, or they find someone else. What if they bring up, the history? Sarah asked. Then we'll discuss how much institutional knowledge they lost and what it's cost them. Every penny. At 1:45, Maria knocked. They're here. Should I put them in conference room A? Let them wait until 2. I'd noise. Exactly. Through my office window, I could see the Brightwell delegation in our lobby. 5 executives in identical navy suits, looking uncomfortable in our casual, creative space. Roger Hartley was among them. Older now, grayer. He kept checking his phone, nervous energy radiating from every gesture. At 2, precisely, I walked to conference room A. My team was already seated on one side of our reclaimed wood table. The Brightwell executives stood when I entered, a reflex of corporate hierarchy they couldn't shake. Gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. And Jennifer, let's discuss what Carter Analytics might be able to do for Brightwell Dynamics. Roger Hartley couldn't look me in the eye. He stared at his leather portfolio while Jennifer Harrison outlined Brightwell's cascading failures. Lost clients, evaporating market share, a brand that had become synonymous with corporate incompetence. The numbers she presented were worse than what the trade publications reported. We need a complete financial restructuring, Jennifer said, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly. Your proposal mentioned a 3-month engagement. 6 months minimum, I interrupted. The damage is too extensive for anything less. 6 months at $3 million, board member Richard Cross interjected. I remembered him. He'd signed off on my termination without ever meeting me. That seems excessive. I leaned back in my chair, letting silence fill the room. Sarah slid a tablet across the table, showing our client results. Exeter Medical Group, we saved them $4 million annually. Riverside Manufacturing Consortium, $6 million recovered. Patel Enterprises, they're now our biggest success story. We understand your capabilities. Roger finally spoke, his voice smaller than I remembered. But the price? Let me be clear, I said, standing. 3 years ago, you paid me $120,000 annually. I generated $8 million in savings my final year alone. You replaced me with 2 junior analysts at $60,000 each. Would you like to discuss what those decisions have cost you? The room went arctic. Jennifer looked between Roger and the board members, clearly unaware of the full history. That's not relevant to... Richard started. It's entirely relevant. I pulled up my own presentation. Every single crisis you're facing stems from the systematic elimination of experienced personnel. You didn't just fire me. You gutted institutional knowledge. You lost Tom Martinez, who understood your entire marketing ecosystem. Sarah here. I gestured to my colleague. She built your risk assessment models. Marcus created your database architecture, all deemed too expensive. Marcus leaned forward. The junior staff you hired to replace me corrupted 3 years of data. It'll cost you $500,000 just to recover it. If it can be recovered, Sarah added. Roger's face had gone pale. We made strategic decisions based on market conditions. You made greedy decisions based on quarterly earnings. My voice cut through his corporate doublespeak. You thought experience was overpriced. Now you're hemorrhaging money because no one knows how your own systems work. Jennifer cleared her throat. What would Carter Analytics need to begin? I returned to my seat, pulling out our contract. $6 million, 6 months, full access to all systems and personnel. And I paused, meeting each of their eyes. Public acknowledgement of Carter Analytics' role in the restructuring. $6 million? Richard's voice cracked. That's double. That's the price. I closed my portfolio. You came to us because we're the best. We're the best because we value expertise. That value has a cost. We need to discuss this with the full board, Jennifer said. Of course, you have 48 hours. After that, the price goes up. I stood, my team following. We're very busy. Riverton General Health System wants us to handle their expansion. That contract alone would keep us occupied for 8 months. Roger suddenly stood. Emily, wait. Everyone froze. It was the first time he'd used my first name. He struggled, then found his words. I knew it was wrong. When we let you go, I knew what you were worth. But I was a coward. I didn't fight for you. For any of you. The confession hung in the air like smoke. I saw Jennifer's eyes widen as she finally understood the full picture. I know, I said simply. And now you're going to pay market rate for that cowardice. We left them in the conference room. Through the glass walls, I watched them huddle together, panic evident in their gestures. Jennifer was pulling up numbers on her laptop. Richard was on his phone, likely calling emergency board members. Roger sat alone, staring at the table where I'd once sat across from him, begging to understand why I was being thrown away. Back in my office, my team erupted. $6 million, Sarah laughed. They looked like they were going to vomit. They'll pay, Marcus said confidently. They have no choice. But I wasn't celebrating yet. I stood at my window, watching the sun set over Riverton, painting Brightwell's tower in shades of gold and shadow. The company that had tried to destroy me was now begging for salvation. The price I'd set wasn't just about money, it was about value. My value. Our value. Every person they discarded as too expensive. My phone buzzed. A text from James, the janitor. Heard Brightwell big shots came crawling to you. Good. Then another, from Tom at his marketing firm. Whatever you're charging them, double it. At 7 p.m., as my team prepared to leave, Jennifer Harrison called. Ms. Carter, the board has made a decision. I waited, letting her deliver the news on my timeline. We accept your terms, 6 million, 6 months, full access. She paused. And public acknowledgement of Carter Analytics' role. Send the signed agreement tonight. We begin Monday. Thank you. I hung up. There would be no thank yous, no gratitude. This was business. The same cold, calculating business they'd taught me when they reduced me to numbers on a spreadsheet. But I'd learned the lesson better than they ever imagined. Monday morning, I walked through Brightwell's revolving doors for the first time in 4 years. The lobby hadn't changed. Same marble floors, same abstract art, same security desk where Miguel used to work. He was gone now. Probably deemed too expensive as well. For 6 months, my team and I dissected every failure, every short-sighted decision, every penny lost to arrogance. We worked from their offices, setting up in the executive conference room, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the entire city. I insisted on it. Every morning, Roger had to walk past us, seeing his former, too expensive employees now charging 50 times their old salaries to fix his mistakes. The restructuring was brutal and efficient. We identified 47 million in losses directly attributed to the brain drain they'd created. We rebuilt systems from scratch because the cheap replacements had corrupted everything. Sarah recoded their entire risk assessment protocol. Marcus reconstructed 3 years of data. I personally handled the client recovery, calling CEOs who'd fled Brightwell and convincing them to return, not for Brightwell, but because I guaranteed the quality with Carter Analytics' reputation. The day we submitted our final report, the entire board assembled. Jennifer Harrison, now CEO after the board's desperation move, sat at the head of the table. Roger had been quietly demoted to an advisory role. Richard Cross had resigned in month 3 when we exposed how his cost-cutting measures had violated several contracts, exposing Brightwell to lawsuits. The restructuring is complete, I announced, pulling up our final presentation. Brightwell is stabilized, your hemorrhaging has stopped. Client confidence is returning, the ship won't sink. You saved us, Jennifer said. The company would have gone under without Carter Analytics. I shook my head. No, we didn't save you. We gave you a second chance. What you do with it is your responsibility. I placed a single folder on the table. There's one more thing. Our analysis shows you still have a critical weakness, the same one that created this crisis. You don't value experience. You don't invest in people. Until that changes, you'll be back here in 5 years. Maybe less. Roger finally looked at me directly. What do you recommend? Hire people like the ones you fired. Pay them what they're worth. Stop treating human beings like spreadsheet cells. I closed my laptop. But that's just advice. Free of charge. As my team packed up, Jennifer approached me privately. Would you consider a permanent position? Chief Strategic Officer, name your price. I almost laughed. Jennifer, you still don't get it. I don't need you anymore. I never will again. Walking out of Brightwell for the last time, I didn't look back. The check for 6 million had already been deposited. Carter Analytics had grown to 30 employees during the Brightwell engagement, turning away other clients because we were at capacity. Our reputation had become legendary, the firm that saved Brightwell Dynamics from their own stupidity. A year later, I stood before my team of 50 in our new offices, 3 floors in a restored Art Deco building in downtown Riverton. We'd just closed our first 8-figure year. On the wall behind me hung a framed document, Brightwell's termination letter. Your position has been eliminated due to budgetary optimization. Why keep it? A new hire asked during orientation. Because, I said, it reminds me that someone else's inability to see your value doesn't diminish it. They called me too expensive. They were right. I was too expensive for them, because they couldn't afford to lose me. Sarah laughed. Best firing that ever happened. To all of us, Marcus added, raising his coffee mug. The truth is, being fired from Brightwell didn't break me. It freed me. It forced me to stop asking others to value me and instead set my own price. They thought they were cutting costs. Instead, they created their most expensive competitor. Last week, I read that Brightwell is struggling again. Jennifer Harrison left for a startup. Roger retired early. The company stock is down another 30%. Part of me wonders if they'll call again. If they'll come crawling back with another crisis only we can solve. But this time, I won't answer. Not because I'm vindictive, but because I'm busy. Too busy building something they could never understand. A company that knows people aren't expenses to be minimized, but investments to be maximized. They were right about one thing, though. I was too expensive for them. I was worth so much more than they could ever afford to understand. The day they called me too expensive was the day I became priceless. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about workplace value and standing up for your worth. Your story matters too.